I'm here with Stuart Weiss for the International Week at Universidade de Caxias do Sul. Stuart Weiss is an American psychologist, teacher, speaker, and author who specializes in belief in superstitions and critical thinking. Stuart taught at Providence College, the University of Rhode Island, and Connecticut College. He is the author of books that explore rationality, irrationality, and our beliefs in superstitions. Among others, Stuart wrote Believing in Magic, The Psychology of Superstition, a very short introduction, and The Uses of Delusion, Why It's Not Always Rational to Be Rational. Stuart, thank you for being here today
It's
and for
my
being
pleasure.
part of the International Week. Stuart, let's talk about some topics that you have covered in your books. And my first question is, superstitions have had different definitions and connotations throughout the ages, and you wrote about that in your book. And how superstition can be defined nowadays?
Well, you're right about that. The one thing that's constant about the word superstition over time is that it always has been sort of a negative label. But what it was negative about has changed over time. And so it used to be for the most part, a superstition was a belief that wasn't consistent with the dominant religion, the local religion, right? Your religion is superstition, my religion is fine. But as we got into the scientific age and religion took a different position, it now has come to mean a belief that is not supported by science. And so I cling to a fairly simple definition, which is that it's a belief that is not supported by science and that is in some way pragmatic. It's aimed at achieving some goal, getting something, good luck, achieving good luck versus and avoiding bad luck. So that's it for the most part.
And Stuart, how superstitions are different from habits. For example, imagine that I go to work every morning and I usually put my shoes at the same place every day. Is it like a superstition or a habit, or it depends on what I think about that?
Your last part is exactly right. It depends on what you think about that. I mean, it often comes up in sports, that athletes develop, they call them routines or habits, and they do the same thing every time. And there are coaches actually encourage this, that you establish a standard pattern that you follow. And I think there are many benefits to that. It becomes a superstition if you think it has a magical, effect. If you believe that putting your shoes in the same place is going to, bring you there's a direct effect between that and some great reward coming. In that case, I think you've slipped over into the world of superstition. But if it's just a habit, and often these habits are great because you don't have to think about it. It works out well. It's pragmatic. Your shoes are always in the same place or whatever, and it frees you up to think about the more important things in life.
Oh, yes. And so are superstitions universal? Can we find them in all cultures in the world? Or they are like more Western phenomena or something like that?
No, they are pretty much everywhere. I haven't found a culture that doesn't have a superstition of some kind. The kinds of superstitions vary with the culture, of course, right? There are some standard sort of Western and European superstitions. In Asia, they have their own specific ones, and then there are also superstitions that go throughout the world, but they're different in each culture. So for example, something like the evil eye, which is one of my favorite superstitions, is found all over the globe, not everywhere. I grew up in the middle of the United States and I'd never heard of it before. But it's certainly in South America, certainly in Europe and parts of Europe and in the Middle East and even South Asia, right? So it's a very big thing, but how it's interpreted in each place does vary, and it's kind of interesting in that way.
Yeah, and talking about common superstitions, before our conversation, Stuart, I was searching for some superstitions that are common in Brazil, and I
Uh-huh.
wrote some down. For example, four-leaf clovers bring luck, bring good luck. If you are walking around and find a four-leaf clover, some people get that and perhaps put into like
Yeah,
something like that. If you
we
break
have
a
that one
mirror,
too.
yeah, you have that one too.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
if you break a mirror, you'll get 7 years of bad luck. Some people say.
right.
Black cats bring bad luck, and
Mhm.
also we should not walk under a ladder, and so on.
Right,
And
right.
I think these superstitions are also common in the States.
Yes, all of those are, and in parts of Europe as well. So yeah, those are very standard ones. And you'll find that in the US, in surveys that they've done, they don't do it very often, but once in a while there'll be a poll where they will survey people on how many, and you'll find that those that you mentioned, somewhere between 10 and 20% of people believe in each of those.
Stuart, you wrote in the book that people are not uh, innately superstitious. We learn to be superstitious. And
Right.
how does that happen? How can we learn to be superstitious? Because of family, because of like just coincidence. For example, I went to a game with a certain shirt, and then my team won, and then I said, okay, that works. I will.
Both of those things. I mean, so the superstitions that you just mentioned, those popular cultural superstitions, those we learn just by living. You know, that our parents. It comes up in conversation. It's in the news. And particularly if the people around you, your parents or your family, includes people who are quite superstitious, it's very likely that you will acquire that too, just as part of upbringing. And so that's that. And then you also mentioned the sort of coincidence one. They call it personal superstition. You know, there are many superstitions that people have that are personal to them. And that it's not like they would say, you know, I wore this shirt, you should get a shirt like this and wear it too. It usually is just for the individual. And those are, I think there are probably two factors there. One, I think that you have to grow up in a family or an environment where the idea of superstition is something that you would, or magic is something that you would endorse. It's a reality for you. And then the second thing is that there is some kind of coincidence that you notice that you think might have special value, and you know, fans who are intensely connected to a particular team often have these kinds of things. So,
And is it possible to unlearn to be superstitious? Like I think it's easy for us to learn to be superstitious, and does the opposite occur?
unlearn it? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't. Here's I mean, what inherent in your question is it bad to be
Oh yeah,
superstitious? You
yes.
know, in which case we might want to unlearn it. I bring this up often, but there are people who are superstitious, and they understand and rationally that it's not. You know, it doesn't make sense, right? But they still want to do it. They have this urge to engage in the superstition and so forth. And I don't see a whole lot of harm. I don't see much bad about that. Yeah. If it ends up costing them a lot of money or it wastes a lot of time, that might be different. But most superstitions are not like that. Like any other phobia, you know, a psychologist, if someone wanted to rid themselves of superstitions, a psychologist could work with them on unlearning phobias, and there are techniques for doing that. But I don't think it often gets to that point for people. You know, if it does, they have other problems as well or something.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, it's not only the superstition. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Stuart, you wrote in your book that there are occasions in which superstitions are helpful to us. For example, they can relieve anxiety, and I mean, so they are not exactly dangerous or not exactly bad. And can you tell us a little bit about more about the occasions in which they are helpful?
Yes. So I think that they're mostly helpful in the situations. So I would separate superstitions into two categories. One is the hopeful ones, where you are engaging in a superstition because you want something to happen. And there are also the negative ones, which come and there's a taboo. black cats, ladders, some of the things that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I feel as though the negative ones don't have much going for them. I believe that we would all be better off if no one had ever taught us the negative ones, because they just add fear, right?
Yes.
It is the case in the U.S. and lots of other places that at large airports there is no gate 13.
Oh, okay.
They skip over it because people don't want to leave on an airplane at gate 13. This is silly, and that's, if no one had ever told us that 13 was unlucky, we would all be better off. But in the positive realm, where you have some lucky charm or lucky ritual, and then this tends to come out in situations when you are anxious, where whatever it is you're looking for, you don't have adequate control over it. You can't make it happen, but you're hoping for it, as in a sports situation. And it undoubtedly does feel good in the moment. It makes you, it reduces anxiety. There is some evidence that it reduces anxiety. Whether it actually helps you perform better in a performance situation, we don't know. It's a little murky. The data goes both directions. But I don't think people would do them unless there was some emotional feeling at the moment that it was better to do it than to not do it.
Yeah.
And so those are the situations. It's not a tremendous benefit, but it's enough to keep it going. And I don't see any major harm in that.
Stuart, a last question, okay? Let me ask a question that is part of the title of your latest book. Why or when, is it rational to be irrational?
Well, this was a controversial book for me to write, because I spent my whole career trying to convince people to be more rational.
Yes.
But I kept coming up against these examples, and the book was the result of that. There are just situations, a few specific situations where it is beneficial. There are moments, not always, but there are moments where overconfidence in your own ability will keep you going, keep you motivated, and keep you moving forward in a way that is positive. One of my favorite sections of the book is about love, right? Falling in love, right? There's real evidence that if you have an unrealistically positive view of your mate, that it's better for the relationship. If you try to analyze your relationship in a purely rational way, as if you were making a cost-benefit analysis, that doesn't bode well for the relationship. You should have, it's better if you have an unrealistically positive view of your mate. So, these are all examples in the book that are backed up by data, and they're fairly specific. They're not like, I'm not trying to get everybody to go totally irrational, but that would be bad. But I was trying to sort of, balance things a little bit and show that despite how reason is really important in most situations, we have to acknowledge that there are some cases where it's not the best thing.
All right. Stuart, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
My pleasure too. Thank you.
Congratulations on your book. They are great.
Oh, thank you.
We don't have them in Portuguese yet, but I hope we can get that soon.
That would be great.
Thank you again.
Thank you.